Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor. This is Iran War Today, our daily briefing, bringing you up to date with all you need to know on day 64 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Let's start with some of today's key developments. Lebanon's health ministry says 13 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon, despite an ongoing ceasefire. A senior military officer in Iran says that renewed fighting with the US was likely. It comes after President Trump says he's not happy about the latest peace proposals from Iran. And a rise in jet fuel prices contributes to the American carrier Spirit Airlines announcing it's shutting down. First today, Lebanon's health ministry says at least 13 people were killed by Israeli strikes on the south of the country on Friday. Israeli attacks on Hezbollah have continued despite a ceasefire agreement. Hezbollah said it targeted Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. Now the Lebanon's army chief and head of the nation's ceasefire monitoring committee are holding what they call an extraordinary meeting in Beirut on the security situation. Let's quickly remind you why Lebanon is also involved in this conflict. When the US and Israel launched wide-ranging strikes on Iran, they soon expanded to Lebanon, which is a country bordering Israel. That's because Lebanon is home to a Shia Muslim political and military group called Hezbollah. They have strong backing from Iran and oppose Israel's right to exist. Our correspondent Wira Davis is in Jerusalem and can tell us if the ceasefire is still in place.
There are increasing concerns that this very fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon is on the verge of collapsing, and that could lead to a pretty rapid resumption of a full-scale war. To be honest, it is a ceasefire in name only, even though much of the heavy Israeli bombing we saw towards the end of the recent conflict that hit towns like Beirut, Tyre, other parts of southern Lebanon, that has effectively stopped. Israel continues to attack Hezbollah targets and other villages and towns in southern Lebanon. Reports from the end of the week just gone say that 30 people have been killed in Israeli bombing, including many civilians, women and children. Israel says it is targeting Hezbollah positions from where Hezbollah is firing rockets not only towards Israel but also towards Israeli troops. It must be remembered there are significant numbers of Israeli troops who have invaded southern Lebanon and remain there. Israel has declared a buffer zone, an exclusion zone, a so-called yellow line, which is roughly 10 kilometres or 6 miles inside Lebanon. But some of the evacuation orders that Israel has been issuing have included towns and villages well outside this exclusion area, and people in these areas have been reportedly killed in Israeli airstrikes. Now, Israel says the ceasefire is holding, but it reserves the right to attack Hezbollah positions to stop them, of course, firing towards Israel. Amid all of this is what should happen next. There are some elements in Lebanon, including the president, Joseph Aoun, who are said to be in favour of some sort of dialogue and negotiations with Israel. We've seen that messaging from the Americans. They want the Israelis and the Lebanese to get around the table and talk. But it's much more complicated than sitting down and talking. Of course, there are several factions within Lebanese society who support Hezbollah and its positions. One of their main demands before they would talk is that Israeli troops should leave southern Lebanon, where they've been for several weeks now. But Israel is not about to do that, while it still sees many of these towns and villages in the south as potential places from where Hezbollah could target Israel. So the feeling here for now is that this very fragile ceasefire, if you can call it that, is holding. But it is fragile and it could break at any moment.
In Iran, a senior military officer has said that renewed fighting with the US was likely. It comes hours after President Trump said he wasn't happy with the latest peace proposals Tehran has reportedly submitted to mediators Pakistan. In quotes published by Iran's Fars news agency, Mohammad Jafar Sadi said a renewed conflict between Iran and the United States is likely, adding that evidence has shown that the United States is not committed to any promises or agreements. David Albright from the Institute for Science and International Security says he's not surprised that the White House is dismissive of the proposals being put forward by Tehran.
It's not a serious offer. For example, it demands that all International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors resolutions be rescinded. I mean, it asserts this right to enrichment that doesn't really exist its enrichment program is ended, destroyed, I should say, could slowly make a comeback, but it serves no purpose other than building nuclear weapons. And so it's just not, it's a non-starter. And I think he's correct not to engage in negotiations over proposals that aren't serious.
The ceasefire is something Donald Trump has been using to justify not getting written consent from Congress for the war. Catherine Yon Ebright from the Brennan Center, which is a law and policy organization in the US, explains.
President Trump needed to secure congressional authorization before even launching the war, but now that the war is past 60 days, it is unambiguously unlawful. The Trump administration, for its own part, is arguing that the ceasefire that has existed for the past 2 weeks of April means that the 60-day clock has been paused or even terminated. But there is nothing in the War Powers Resolution's text or design that suggests that the clock can be paused. Instead, that clock ran out on May 1.
Well, we wait and see what Congress will do next. But in the meantime, no new date for in-person talks between the US and Iranian delegations has been set. Both countries continue to block sea traffic in and around the Gulf, which is having a big impact on economies around the world. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, reiterated the UK's position when he spoke to Nick Robinson on the Today programme.
What is the scale of the crisis you think we are now facing as a country as a result of the fact that the lifeblood of the global economy, oil, cannot travel through the Strait of Hormuz?
The way I'd express it is this. There are moments in history that will define a generation. And I think we're in one of those moments. The Iran war is not our war. We're not getting dragged into it. Whatever pressure is put on me, I'm not going to drag the United Kingdom into a war. It's not in our national interest. But it is impacting us. It's impacting our economy. It's impacting what happens on our streets.
As Keir Starmer mentioned, this war is having an impact globally, and today an airline has announced it will be shutting down. Spirit Airlines is the first carrier to fall victim to the Iran war, which has caused jet fuel prices to double. The American budget carrier ceased operations after failing to secure creditor support for a government bailout plan. Well, these people in Fort Lauderdale in Florida gave us their reaction to the news and whether they'd support a bailout.
Hearing that Spirit is shutting down, I think it's insane. I always thought Spirit had a bunch of customers and a lot of support with other people flying as well.
I look at more so for the people that actually work in Spirit as well. If that means you're bailing out Spirit, that means these people could keep their jobs. I'm all for it.
Jet fuel prices, as we've mentioned, have doubled since the start of the war, as the conflict has slowed the production and transportation of fuel across the Middle East. This is having a huge impact on airlines like Spirit, as aviation consultant Paul Charles explains.
If you're any airline, let alone Spirit, 35% of your fixed costs come from jet fuel. So in the majority of cases, especially in the US, you don't buy jet fuel in advance like many European airlines do at a fixed price. You're buying them on the day at whatever price is available. And the price of jet fuel has soared in recent weeks, pretty well doubled to $5 or so. And that's simply unsustainable for most airlines. Spirit was already in financial dire straits, and therefore that higher cost, if you're paying double on 35% of your fixed costs, it's simply unsustainable.
Let's take a look at what might happen next and what this all might mean for the end of the war. With me is Siavash Ardalan, senior reporter for BBC Persian. So do you know anything at all about the latest proposals that Iran has put forward?
Well, we know that officially these proposals were submitted on Thursday through the Pakistanis. We don't exactly know what the different articles in this proposal contain, but we think it's a modification of the initial proposal that Iran had gave just 2 weeks ago, which centered around ending the naval blockade on one hand in exchange for opening up the Strait of Hormuz, and then leaving the nuclear and the missile and the proxy group issues for a later date to be discussed between the US and Israel.
And people are searching online always, when will the war end? What's your assessment to that big question?
Well, it depends, because it depends what you mean by war. Is it necessarily just military confrontation? Because as far as some people are concerned in Iran and the US, this naval blockade itself constitutes a declaration of war. And at any time, as far as Iran is concerned, it reserves, as it said, the right to take action to confront this military naval blockade, which would then trigger a retaliation by the US, and then we're back to square one. So we are in a situation of no war, no peace. If the US accepts Iran's proposal for opening up those waterways, whether it's Iran's blockade or the Strait of Hormuz, and then to leave the talks for the bigger, agreement that the two countries want to achieve, then there is a chance that we might see an end to this war. But if it's going to be the US position, which wants everything on the table, including the blockade, the strait, nuclear issue, ballistic missiles, Iran's support for proxies, sanctions removal for Iran, then I think we're quite a bit far off from that point.
And in terms of the pain kind of for the economy, the global economy, but also in Iran, how is that shaping up in terms of who will suffer most and essentially be put under pressure fastest?
It's difficult. Both sides are strangulating each other. Iran is really holding the global economy hostage, and the US is exerting enormous pressure on Iran's economy. It was already bad enough before the naval blockade because of US and Israeli strikes. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of people were laid off from their jobs. Inflation has been rampant. Here in the West, we're talking about single-digit figures for inflation, but in Iran, it's now double digits or even triple digits. So the currency is taking a free fall, and at the same time, people don't have internet. Internet disconnection has gone into its second month. So without internet, without a job, without a money, you can imagine what the people are going through now.
Siavash Ardalan, thank you very much indeed for those thoughts there. Thank you. Whether you're joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thanks for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today. Bye for now.